Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Erik Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. So we've got kind of a nice little bonus episode type of deal here where we're going to be vamping about how good the podcast has been going so far and like what do we see is like, do we want to continue doing it first of all? And then what kind of, if we do continue doing it, what kind of changes do we want to see? And then what has the reception sort of been like that we've seen? So we did this on purpose where we did not prep together for this discussion. So we did that on purpose so that you can get our honest sort of like reactions and takes on stuff. So we have not talked to each other about like what, you know, some of the details about what we've been thinking. So, I mean, where do you want to start, Erik? I mean, should we start with the big question?
Yeah, let's start with the big question. I think that, you know, we don't want to leave people hanging on that one.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it on the count of three?
Yeah, let's do on the count of three. We'll say yes or no to should we continue doing this podcast? Are you ready?
All right.
Now we're going to say it on three.
All right, say it on three.
1, 2, yes.
Yes. Awesome.
Sweet. We're aligned.
We are aligned.
That's good. So what? Maybe let's start with that. Why? First of all, why do you want to continue doing it?
I think there's like two big things, and we started this, and we can maybe get into it in a little bit. We started maybe for, you know, we each had our individual reasons for starting this, but I think the big one for me is I've been learning a lot, like forcing myself to learn about these things so that I can talk about them intelligently. I've learned a ton of like new things and what's going on in the ecosystem, like more deeply. So like I feel like I have a good handle on what's going on right now in the web community. And I think that's been really good for just my own personal growth. And two, it's a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun doing it. And then kind of like three is it's helped bump some of the stuff that we're working on. So like for me specifically, like I've seen a lift in Excalibur. I've seen a lift in some of the other projects that I'm working on. And, you know, through some direct like name dropping of projects, but, you know, other things are just happening without me doing it. So I'm like, okay, well, that's just good.
Yeah, that's nice. I think I'm similar. So like, I think first, like, we don't want to continue doing it if it's not fun for us, right? Because that's just going to come through in the recordings and the way we do the podcast, right? So I agree. So this is a fun time when we get to meet up and just chat about stuff. And then I'm learning a whole ton about, you know, how people are using TypeScript in the wild and like what's going on in the ecosystem. And then I think especially once we start to get, I think, more guests on and stuff, it'll be even more fun because those have always been super fun episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like the idea of like getting people in from the community and giving them a platform. I had a bunch of stuff around like the strategy and how it's going so far. So I want to see if you agree with some of the stuff that I wrote down, because we talked about it initially when we started the podcast, like why do we want to do it and like how we want to divide like what it's for and who it's for and why we want to continue doing it. So I think I've told you before, I think that the objective of the podcast, or like what's our main goal, is to be the number one podcast for TypeScript developers. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't even know if number one is really that meaningful. I almost want to say that we want to reach like a critical mass of TypeScript developers. Because if you're the only podcast that is running on TypeScript, you know, like on a TypeScript topic, then you're automatically number one. So that's not as meaningful of like, but are people actually listening, you know?
Smart goals here.
Yeah.
It's set up the dominoes to knock them down.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that that's just sort of a marketing thing. Like, yeah, we're the number one podcast. Oh, because there's no one else doing it, right? So I don't think that's super meaningful. So I think I might want to adjust this, and we can put this on our notes. We have like a meta document that sort of documents all this. But I think I was hoping that we could reach like some percentage of the TypeScript population. So that I think would be more helpful to define. Of like what's our, like, that's an easy thing to do milestones for too. So we could say, you know, once we reach like 10% of the population, 20%, 30%, 50%, and then the question is, how do we actually measure that? And I had a few ideas. One is there are like state of JavaScript and state of TypeScript surveys, I think, and I believe that they mention like what podcast do you listen to.
Right.
There is also like, I think overall, like the Stack Overflow developer survey, I believe also has like, what podcast do you listen to? So I think one of the first milestones would be like, we show up on one of those.
Right.
Right. And then once we're on there, you know, then we can measure subsequently what percentage of responses, you know, include that.
And there are some where we can put our name in the hat for these surveys. And I've done that for Excalibur in particular, just so that we show up on the list. And it's kind of like a roundabout way of advertising. Yeah. Because then people will be taking the survey and they'd be like, oh, I haven't heard of this thing. I might check it out. And it's on the list of like things that we're asking about. So then it's like, oh, it has some gravitas, whether it should or shouldn't, because it's on the list.
Yep. Okay, so that is more around like the overall like goal or objective that's like measurable. I think as a mission, like, why does this podcast exist? Because I actually did ask you when we were in person the other day, if Excalibur ceased to become a thing, like if you no longer worked on Excalibur, would you still want to do the podcast? And what did you say?
Yeah, I still do.
Yeah, so what that tells me is that it's community first, right? So like the mission of the podcast, I wrote down like, we want to make the TypeScript community feel seen, right? So that's kind of the way that I think about the podcast, is a community first type of deal, because historically, I mean, that's really what motivated us to do this in the first place, because we went back and forth, right? Like, oh, you know, there could be better people to do this podcast. I mean, you know, we're not like super in the community, you know, yet. Like, are we, or do we feel like imposters doing this and stuff? But the fact of the matter is that no one was doing this.
Right.
And then we did have a good reason to do it, not just like for the community, which I think is the primary motivation. And then the secondary motivation is, yes, because Excalibur is a TypeScript first open source game engine, like this is a way to do marketing for it. So like if we just make Excalibur the sponsor of the podcast, then that's a way to spread awareness.
Right.
And
I sponsor myself.
Yeah, you're sponsoring it yourself, because if our primary audience for Excalibur is TypeScript developers, right? So one of the best marketing strategies I've ever been taught from my coach was help people you like get what they want for free at scale. And like a podcast is a really good way to do that. And so, and by orienting it that way, that's a marketing strategy. We want to help TypeScript developers get what they want, which might be news, like staying informed is something that I think people want. They also want to get deeper into TypeScript and learn more about it. You know, they want to succeed at it, like in their career. They want to be better TypeScript developers. So our hope with this podcast is to deliver that. Like that's the promise that we're trying to make here. And so, yes, it's about spreading awareness with Excalibur, but that's not the marketing strategy. The strategy is we want to help TypeScript developers level up,
That's
basically.
Right. Yeah.
And for free at scale. Like Excalibur is free. It's free and open source. It's BSD2 licensed. So this is not like a VC-backed company that's sponsoring a podcast. It's just us, right?
Yeah. I like to joke that we're a company of 1.5. And like the goal is not to grow like VC style. Like the goal is to be slow and steady and sustainable. So like that's the plan with Excalibur in particular. So we're really not looking for hyper growth. I mean, that's not what we're about. We're about making video games and making it so that more people can make video games. And in our sphere of people, like a bunch of folks got into programming because they want to make games. And then for whatever reason, they didn't. But now we can say we have a thing that can help you do that.
Yep.
And I don't know. I think really making games is a lot of fun. That's why we're doing it.
Yep.
And so the goal is not to make money. It's to have fun.
Yep, for sure. I mean, Excalibur is definitely like a community first type of approach. And anything that does get like commercialized in the future is going to be stuff that's separate from Excalibur core. So whether that is creating tools for like indie developers or studios or, I don't know, licensing for other things like distribution and things like that. Or we've talked about like just publishing games by themselves. Like you can monetize the publishing of those games. Like you can release a game that was built with Excalibur and maybe it helps pay for, development and stuff like that. And it's also, that's dog fooding the engine too. So
and for
lots of different ways.
On the publishing side, we're working on some tech to go to consoles. So like that's part of the reason that you need to have a company around it, because you need to have someone that can sign an NDA with like Nintendo or Xbox or PlayStation.
Yep.
Because all of their development kits are proprietary. So it kind of forces your hand to have some sort of proprietary software in the mix somewhere. Kind of like, and I've told people like, what's the elevator pitch for, Caliburn Games, which is the company that is the commercial entity beside Excalibur. It's the same as W4 Games is to Godot, publishing to consoles, offering premium support, custom development, and then everything else is open source. Like Godot is all open source.
Yep.
Same idea to the T. I'm basically copying Juan. So
yeah, I mean, copy what works, right? Okay, I had a couple other thoughts for like one thing that we talked about at the beginning, and I don't know if we have a clear answer even right now, but like one of the questions was, where does the community for this podcast exist? Like, do we create a separate Discord? Do we push people to the Excalibur Discord? Do we, do something else? So I think at the start, we're like, we don't want to have to maintain like a separate thing. Like it's, it's already enough work to do podcast recording and prep and editing and publishing. Maintaining a separate community also just doesn't quite feel right, because, and pushing them to the Excalibur Discord also doesn't really feel right, because Excalibur users are going to be like a very small subset of the audience. We have a TypeScript FM channel there, but that's for people that are already in the community. So I felt like one thing that we haven't really talked too much about, and maybe this is something we'll have to talk to other people about, it's just maybe we could collaborate with somebody else that already has like a TypeScript community. And maybe we could do something in there. I'm not sure. But like that feels more right than like trying to separate out and create a separate community.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's a lot of alignment with other existing communities, and like maybe that's where we work with people to be like, hey, do you mind if we maybe put a channel in this Discord to talk about this, so that we can,
and that's even assuming that people want that. Like that's why we didn't create it, right? Because no one has asked for like, where is the community for TypeScript FM? No one's asked that, so like we don't want to create something that nobody's really asking for. Cool. Okay. I did have a few questions for you, and then this is now getting into more of the like, what maybe should we change? But first of all, I was going to ask, how do you feel about the time you're spending right now on the podcast?
I feel okay. I think let me back up. I have oversubscribed myself this year. I have committed to too much, and fairly, my partner was like, "Are you sure? Because you already have a lot on your plate." And I'm like, "Yeah, it'll be fine." So, it's not the podcast. It's the fact that I say yes to too many things. So I've got my fingers in a bit of everything lately that's happening in the Twin Cities around programming and game dev. So, and I have a toddler. So, difficulty difficulty up. So, and I want to be like present for her and like, and be like around for her. I don't want to like sequester myself while she's in like the toddler years. These are so much fun.
Yes. Yep.
You know, so I think what I need to do is drop things and not the podcast because I really want to do it. So I think it's important for me to carve out really like dedicated time. And we've kind of had trouble with this lately because of the holidays and some of the travel that we've had.
Yes. Yep.
So like when we're off the regular schedule, it's really hard for us to like recoup.
Yes.
And get back.
Yep.
So I think that's the tough part is just the scheduling. If we get off of the regular cadence, which we are right now, technically.
Yep. So I agree. I think I'm also pretty happy with the amount of time that I spent on this. And so just so the audience is aware, I feel like the first 10 episodes, maybe first 9 or 10 episodes, I would just go through the editing and I would just download the audio and I would do all the editing. And I'm pretty good at doing editing pretty quickly, so it didn't ever take me too long. But then we switched to Riverside, and with Riverside, you have your built-in editor. So the recordings all go to Eric's Riverside. So he's been editing like the last 3 episodes, I think, right? And I've also been
something like that.
traveling, so like I couldn't edit while I was traveling, so Eric took on that editing. But now we got to figure out like how do we want to do editing, because I've talked to other people who have podcasts who actually have an editor. They hire an editor, and there's like a trade-off there. On one hand, you delegate out the task, but on the other hand, you got to wait for them to edit it. So the timing, you need to send it to them far enough in advance where they can get the edit out and then, release it. So I actually think it's faster to just let me do the editing, but we got to figure out what do we do during travel. So I got some feedback, or it was, other people had similar questions actually in the coaching community I'm in who are running podcasts. And one of the suggestions was whenever we had travel coming up or like one of us was going to be out, this is what the person was saying, we just record 2 episodes at once. That way we can record both of them and then we can schedule the next one so that we don't have to do anything, during the week that somebody's out. So we kind of did that on one of them, I think, where we recorded on like a Friday and we took 2 episodes or we split them up. But I think it would be nice to come up with like what do we do in this case? Like we know that Kamran's going to be out or Eric's going to be out. Like how do we want to do that?
Yeah, and we had a couple wrenches hit the mix, like on my side and your side, which made it hard for us to... We didn't foresee us being unavailable, and then we wound up being unavailable.
Yep.
So.
People get sick.
Yeah.
Which is hard. Okay. So I think that there's a couple things that make that harder. One of them was, should we consider splitting up news and community stuff from deep dive topics / interviews? Because I think the hard part with the timing is that right now, listeners usually get like a 2-week lag time for news, right? So we record on a Monday and we cover the news of the previous week, but then we don't schedule that episode because we have to edit throughout the week, and then we schedule it for the following Monday. So then by then it's 2 weeks out of date, right?
Yeah.
So one advantage of us recording like news and stuff is that it's usually pretty short and I could probably turn it around within a day. But even if we don't, like if we recorded, let's say on Friday or Tuesday or something like that, we could then release it either on that Monday, so it gives me the weekend to do it, or if we record on Tuesday, we could release Thursday, so that gives me like 3 days to do it. Because that's the hard part, is like you still need a little bit of time to do the editing, but then that way we could record topics separately, and those take a little bit longer to edit. Usually it takes a couple hours to edit those.
I think I'm down to 2 or 3. I think the last one that I did took me 3 hours.
Yep. So I was wondering if we should consider, rather than releasing every Monday, which now we're off track for that, if we should maybe think about doing like a 2 episode per week. Yeah. So one is like comes out on Tuesday, and that's like news for the previous week. And then the one that comes out on Thursday is like the deep dive. And then we actually maybe either do 2 recording sessions rather than 1, where 1 is just the news that maybe we record like on Sunday or something.
Right.
And then I can release it Tuesday. And then on Thursdays, maybe we meet and we record a deep dive episode. I'm not sure. I mean, because I like what we have going on right now, which is like we prep on Sunday and then we record on Monday. So it's like fresh in our minds.
Right.
But I'm just thinking
and we could still do that.
We could still do that, but then just split up the editing or like split up the episode. Yeah.
We could even record the news after our prep on Sunday night if we're not too tired. You know, or we could record it on Monday and just edit it into 2.
Yep. Yeah, actually, I wonder if that might make sense. And then the only thing that we have to be aware of is the transitions between the 2 things, right?
Right.
Because right now we just do a single recording session, and so we might reference stuff that we say earlier in the conversation. So now, if we do it this way, we just have to structure it such that we kind of like start fresh with the deep dive episode. I also think that this is also a benefit, not just for us, but maybe the audience too, because just looking through the feedback and stuff that I've seen, no one has said like, hey, I don't like the news or I don't like the deep dives. I only have positive things that people have been saying, but it doesn't give me enough information to know whether or not it's useful to like split them up. But I think it might be, because if there's a news episode, people can skip it if they don't care about news, or if there's a deep dive episode, they can skip it if they don't care about the topic. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I feel like it gives people a little bit more choice with that versus like right now, they have to use the chapter markers to like skip through stuff, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Speaking of, Riverside doesn't embed the chapters in the MP3, which is really annoying.
Yeah, it's annoying. I have Descript that I was using to do all the editing for the initial episodes, and I really liked it for the export function, and the studio effect I think is better than Riverside's. I like Riverside's editing experience better with the multiple tracks. It works better with multiple speakers, but I like Descript's export function, and I like its studio effect that it can do. Anyway, we'll have to figure that out, because we don't want to pay for 2 tools.
Yeah.
So we might just have to live with Riverside.
Yeah, I do. It is super nice because it's really tolerant of faults in the system versus like other recording setups where it's on us to make sure that we did it right. So Riverside has been pretty fault tolerant. I've heard horror stories from other people that aren't us that have had like a more mixed experience with Riverside, and maybe we'll hit some of that, and maybe that's been fixed now. But so far for us, it's been pretty fault tolerant to network hiccups because of the way it works. It records locally and then progressively uploads to Riverside, which is nice.
Yep. Yeah, before we were using Zoom, and like Zoom can do local recordings or cloud recordings, so I would just take the audio tracks. The tough part with Zoom is that it doesn't do separate video tracks. So Riverside does do separate video tracks, which brings us to the next topic of like, do we want to introduce video? And I think both of our answers, I believe, are no for that, right? Because that's a lot more extra work to do.
And yeah. I mean, maybe we'll put like YouTube shorts here and there if we both look okay. But like, you know, I'm gonna rip the Band-Aid off here. You know, I look like I haven't showered, and that's accurate.
That's funny. I mean, that's the nice thing about just the audio only is we don't got to do makeup, don't have to worry about what we're wearing. Could be in pajamas, doesn't matter. And we're just focused on the audio. I think that if we were gonna be doing more coding stuff, then that would make sense to do on video, right? So there might be. So okay, this actually relates to maybe separating out the topics, because if we are able to separate out the topic episodes, it's possible that like we don't have to release a topic every single week. You know what I mean? Like news can come out every single week, but maybe topics are every other week, you know? But then that gives us a little bit of time where if we want to record something on Riverside where we actually share the screen and show stuff, and then that becomes an avenue where that could be released into a YouTube video or a short or something, but it's separate from the news. Because the news, we don't need, there's no reason to do video for that, I feel like.
Right.
But for deep dives, sometimes there is like a nice reason to share a screen or do something, show code. But at the same time, I don't want to maintain a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I already do 2 YouTube channels, and it's hard enough.
Yeah, it's hard enough. So anyway, I think the plan right now is just to keep with audio. But using Riverside, that gives us the option to do video in the future. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, that is a cool thing. And I also think not doing video helps with like guests that we bring on too, because I know the last time I was on a video podcast, I was all fidgety. And like I was like, why am I doing weird stuff with my head and like my arms? So at least for me, like I don't have to think about how do I act normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. One last thing about news that I had some notes on. I think I've already shared this with you, but I was thinking that we should probably only cover major and minor releases and skip point releases unless there's big news in them.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think so. I think we could. Certainly, it's kind of a case-by-case basis, because a lot of these point releases are
bug fixes.
That's right.
Right. So I was thinking if it's major ones for sure, because there's usually brand new features. And minor ones, I think mostly are pretty good because they usually include some new features. Yeah. So I think, like, for example, the Next.js 15.3, that was worth talking about because it had TypeScript news in it. But, like, not every single bun release, because bun releases so quickly, like, not every single release, like, has, like, brand new stuff to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about what's relevant for people listening, right? Like, what's going to make a difference in their day-to-day if they know about something new.
Exactly. And, you know, if it's just bug fixes, I don't think that's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because people can just subscribe to the release notes for that, right? Okay. Second question. Should we expand into a newsletter for the news?
Yeah. We could put down our, I mean, in effect, it could be our show notes.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking. Because that was my thought, was that I kind of already do this with the show notes. Like, we take the chicken scratch notes that we use in the Google Doc and we copy paste them into the show notes, and then I clean them up for presentation. And that by itself could just be a newsletter, right? Like,
yeah,
because
we're already doing the effort.
We're already doing the effort. So the question is, do we want to do that? So there is a subscribe box on the website, and I believe that adds people to a MailChimp that we have, but we're not doing anything with that. So, like, that does seem like something that might be a good next step, which once we maybe try out a different cadence for the episodes, that also does make it easier, because then it's less show notes if it's just news, and then that news can also just become part of the newsletter, and it also doubles as a notification for new episodes. So, like, obviously if you subscribe to it, like, Spotify will pop up and tell me that a new episode is there, but I think some people maybe still like getting an email. Plus the email is very, like, I can just read over it. If there's something interesting, then I can listen to it type of deal. So, like, maybe we could just do that whenever we publish a news episode, that just gets published as part of, like, the newsletter. So then we'll have to update some of the mid rolls, or, you know, end roll or post roll to say, like, hey, you can join the TypeScript newsletter to get show notes and notifications, because right now we're not really pointing anybody to that. Okay, cool. You had, I think, more stuff for, like, what maybe you had thoughts on what we could change or continue or stop doing. What do you think?
Yeah, I had the good, the meh, and the ugly. So I think there's been a lot of good. Like, I've been really pleasantly surprised with the numbers. So I pulled down some numbers that I could get. Discord, unfortunately, has a barrier between you and analytics until you have 500 members. But we have 396 members in the Excalibur Discords, which subjectively it does feel like the pace of joins is up in the last 14 weeks since starting the podcast.
Did you graph that?
No,
Okay.
it's not easy to do without the Discord stuff. So like I could have paged through it and like plotted each point, but I was like, I'm not going to go through 400 points and plot them manually.
Okay. Yep.
I'll just rely on subjective measure.
Yeah.
The objective measures that I do have access to are we have plausible on a few of our sites, and that's, across the board that's gone up, which is I think double-digit percentage. So, which has been, which is good. And I'm very pleased about that. And the duration, like for ExcaliburJS.com, the average duration is almost 5 minutes.
Okay.
Which means they're reading their content and ingesting content, which is good.
Yeah, this is a recurring nightmare for marketing teams, which is attribution, right? So there is no direct way to say this podcast has resulted in, X number of members joining Discord, because there's just no way for you to track you can't attribute every single join with like the podcast, right? Because they're totally separate systems. Someone could listen to an episode and then join 5 weeks later or whatever. So the trick and the strategy here is, because the podcast is top of funnel, what you need to focus on is leading indicators. And then you just have to know or trust that a leading indicator will then lead to a lagging indicator, right? So if I ask you, Eric, do you think that when someone hears about Excalibur, it's likely that they might check it out?
I think so. If they want to make a game.
Yep. Yeah. So it's basically like awareness, and like that's the top level metric is once someone becomes aware of Excalibur. There's no guarantee that they'll go further down in the funnel, but we do agree that if they cannot proceed further down the funnel unless they are made aware of Excalibur, right? So we can't tie like a lagging indicator, which is like an Excalibur download, to the podcast directly. The best we can do is focus on the leading indicators, and then we agree as part of the strategy, like we agree that awareness will lead to adoption. And for some percentage of people, we don't know how many, but some percentage of people, it could be 1%, could be less than 1%, could be 3%. Some amount of people are going to proceed further down the funnel, right? And then the only way at that point, it will become easier to attribute, because at that point, you could talk to people either directly, or we could talk to them through a survey or a form that says like, where did you hear about Excalibur? And then they might tell you, oh yeah, well, listen to the podcast and I checked it out. And then that's something that you can actually attribute. So anyway, I think the mistake is to like focus on the lagging indicators as a measure of success for the podcast. So I wouldn't do that. But so we can check what the leading indicators are, though. One of those leading indicators is number of listeners and number of downloads. So that's something that we can directly see.
Yeah,
and
I've those numbers pulled up.
Yeah, what are they? How are we doing?
So I'll just be straight up. I think we're doing really well. River and Sister, which is the provider that we're using to host right now, estimates that we have 71 subscribers, which I think is fantastic.
That's really good.
Especially for like a very fledgling podcast. And in the on average, the first 7 days of an episode released, we get 80 downloads, which according to some metrics puts us in the upper quarter of all podcasts. Now that's a saturated market, so perhaps not hard to do. Yeah, perhaps not.
I think it is if you record more than like 6 episodes, that already puts you in like whatever the top X% is. And then if you, release for like 10 weeks or something, then you're already ahead of the majority of podcasts, right?
Yeah.
So,
and
so I think,
of today, we have 1,680 downloads.
Yeah. Okay.
Of the entire show, of every episode.
Yeah. So that's pretty sweet. So I think the way that I would think about this is like, are we growing week to week? Like that would be the measure that I would want to focus on. So either we are growing, we're not growing, or it's lowering, right? And so I think those are the leading indicators. So if we are growing, then that means we are working towards that goal of adoption, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that actually gives us a number, to say, like, if we have 100 subscribers, and then whatever the market size is for TypeScript developers, then we actually do have a percentage of, like, hey, we are reaching 0.2% of TypeScript developers or whatever. So that's something that we can track. We just have to agree on a source of truth for, like, market size, which might be the Stack Overflow developer survey. We just got to pick one, right? It doesn't really matter. We just have to.
We just
pick
need a
one
thing to
and be consistent.
apples to apples.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
We can't pick different sources each time.
Yep. Exactly. And then the other thing that tells us if we're growing week to week is that we're doing something right. If subscribership is going down week to week, then we know that we need to change something. So in lieu of, like, direct feedback, which I don't think we really have, of, like, constructive criticism or anything.
It's all very positive, which makes me feel good, but also doesn't help.
Doesn't tell us anything. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I gave you that book, The Mom Test. I think you read it, right?
Yeah.
It's just like that. Like, it's nice to get positive feedback and we welcome it. Thank you. But also, it doesn't tell us whether we're doing something wrong.
Yeah, so if we are doing something wrong, feedback at typescript.fm, and
Yes.
I will see it immediately.
Yep, for sure. You should definitely do that. And that actually brings me to another point, which is perhaps we need to adopt a tactic some other podcasts do, where we send listeners something if they leave a review or send us feedback or something. Because the inspiration and the way that we've modeled this podcast is over some of our favorites. So, like, .NET Rocks has been a longtime staple of my listening. And so the format of this podcast is very, very similar to, like, .NET Rocks. And I also listen to, like, Changelog FM, and I listen to a bunch of other podcasts, not on technology, syntax, but other ones that are not based on technology too. One of the things is, if we want people to review, we probably have to give them something, because otherwise, they won't, right? Because people are busy, right? So, but if we can give them a mug or something like that, then maybe they will.
Yeah. We're probably in the sticker budget territory.
Yeah, probably in the sticker budget right now. Maybe we could do that, though. So that might be something to talk about in future, is if we could send people stickers. So we'll have to figure out a way to do that if we want to do that. Did you have any like stuff we should stop doing?
I don't think there's anything that's like a hard stop. Like, I have some meh, and I think the only thing that we haven't really covered in our previous conversation so far is that staying focused on a topic is hard for me, and especially, like, to the point where I want to do more with it. Like, I want to build, like, a little toy example so that I can really get my hands dirty into technology, and I just haven't been able to find the time to do that as much as I want.
Yeah, well, see, this is where I think there's a couple ways we could mitigate that. First of all, by splitting it up so that we don't necessarily have to do a deep dive every week, does give us some time to, like, prep more by using stuff before we talk about it. But second of all, now that we've got 2 episodes in the bag where we had guests, so we have a workflow now. So I've got the invite workflow, I've got the booking workflow, we've got the scheduling pretty much figured out for that. So now we can actually start more regularly inviting people on, and that way we don't have to be the experts on stuff.
Yeah, and if you have people that you'd like us to talk to, let us know. And at both of us on Blue Sky or Mastodon or anywhere. Yeah,
and if you're listening and you are someone who should be invited and you haven't been invited yet, don't be offended. Like, it's because we have purposefully not invited too many people so that we can try to figure out what we're doing. So, it's easier. It's also easier not to send mass invites at once and, like, sort of spread it out, because otherwise all of you would be booking time on our calendars right away. That uses up time. So it's kind of easier to figure out, like, what do we want to talk about first? Like, what are the topics? And we have a laundry list of ideas to talk about. So it's like we don't have any shortage of content, that's for sure. But we don't also want to invite everybody all at once for that type of stuff. So anyway.
Right. Yeah. And, big thanks to our two guests so far, Dimitri and Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was so awesome to talk to both of them. Like, I was grinning the whole time
Mm-hmm.
with Dimitri, and I feel a kindred spirit with Josh because I want what he's got. So it's been so fun, and I think I told Dimitri this, but I have a tendency to get starstruck pretty easily, and these we're developer, like, these folks are developer famous, and like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which I think is probably the most fame that I ever want.
Yep, exactly. I had a math thing as well, like a thing that I think we could do better, and I don't know if you agree. So I have a Microsoft Edge workspace for us where we have a bunch of different tab groups. I've created like a listening tab group and a new releases tab group. But right now, basically, we have both of us have to manually scan either the Blue Sky TypeScript feed, the blogs, the subreddit, individual people, community members, blogs, and then I also have tabs for different GitHub releases for a lot of the common ecosystems that we've covered, like Next.js and Bun and Dino and stuff. So I think what I would love is a more streamlined aggregation of that news, or like that feed, those feeds together. And I have a
Yeah.
couple ideas on how to do that, but it's definitely going to require a little bit of setup because there's an app that I use. It's called Mailbrew, and it allows you to add like RSS feeds and different types of sources, and it aggregates them together, and it'll send you like a weekly or a daily summary of those. I don't think it supports all the sources we want. Like, I don't think it supports Blue Sky yet. I don't even know if it's under active development. So we kind of need to figure out something there because that's a pain point for me because
Hmm.
neither of us really want to continuously scroll down the Blue Sky TypeScript feed. And also that TypeScript feed does cut off. Like, there is a cutoff if you don't visit it. It
Yeah. If you
only
miss
goes
it, you miss it.
it goes back like 7 days maybe, or 14 days or something.
Less.
Less? Okay. Yep. So I try to keep tabs on it as much as I can, but I'm sure stuff is falling through the cracks there. So, like, that's another thing of, like, if we missed your thing, it's probably just because we didn't see it. And that's what I mean. And part of our goal here is to elevate that stuff. So if we're missing
Right.
it, then we can't elevate it, right? So
Right.
we need to figure that out so that we can have a better aggregation
Yeah.
of
And
that stuff.
maybe we just need more funnels for that,
Yeah.
like community suggestions, like maybe we have like a forum where people can just shoot us links, or something like that. And then perhaps tooling, because the news gathering process has been more art than science, and that's not awesome.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely some solutions, like through automation. We could probably do some aggregation, and then I agree, like some easy way to send tips or whatever. I mean, you can always email us, but that's still probably a bunch of effort for somebody to do that.
I think that's all I had on my list. I think we talked about everything that I had written down in some shape, form, or another. And I think, if I could do any action item to the audience, is send us more feedback. And it doesn't have to be glowing, although we do appreciate glowing praise. Just suggestions, either suggestions on topics, suggestions on people, suggestions on format. Those are all welcome.
Okay. There is one piece of feedback that we did get together that we should probably talk about, which is should we start the episode with personal news, or should we try to be more efficient and streamline the listening process for people and just get right into either the topic or right into the news? And I have a couple thoughts on it. First thought is that for guest episodes, and this is another reason I think it might be nice to split them up, is that I totally agree for guest episodes, we should just, bam, dive right in.
I agree.
So I think that for guest episodes, if I'm the listener, I really want to focus on that experience. Like, I want to focus on the guest experience. And I think the listener is most interested in hearing from the guest.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, I would say that for news or community news, and maybe even, so I think if we do split it up into a news, community news episode, I do think that part of the way that we differentiate ourselves is by injecting ourselves into the podcast, because that's something that you can't get anywhere else, right? Like, people, if they want to, could probably use some AI thing to like aggregate news and create their own little podcast of stuff, right? And if that is not possible yet, it's going to be possible at some point. You're going to be able to
But
do
it's
that.
devoid of soul.
So that's the thing. Is like I totally get wanting to be efficient, but a podcast, there's this thing called asymmetric intimacy, which is like a listener gets to know you because you're in their ear every single week, right? So they feel like they know you, and they'll come up to you and they'll be like, I feel like I know you. And you as the host are like, well, I don't know you. But that's because you haven't developed that intimacy, right? So the listeners get more familiar with the hosts that way. So I would say for a podcast specifically, I don't think it's a good strategy to pull yourself out too much from it. I do think that you still want to be focused on the listener experience. So that's why
Right.
we try to keep the personal news to a maximum of 5 minutes, I think is what we try. And sometimes if there's not enough, then we go fast, right? We go faster. And I think that is a way for us to like inject some amount of our personality, and also like just share general wisdom or lessons learned or things like that outside of work or outside of technology, or outside of TypeScript. And so I think I would still keep that for newsy episodes, but I do agree that for guest episodes or maybe even deep dive episodes, we don't even need a personal news segment for that.
Yeah, I'd be more than okay.
Yeah.
Making that change. And certainly I think podcasts give you a little more liberty on what you can include, like over other mediums. Like if you were like doing a TikTok, for example, or you were doing YouTube, where you really need to grab their attention. Otherwise you'll lose them.
Yeah.
You have a little more.
The listening habits for a podcast are totally different than a YouTube video. Like, I don't know about you, but I usually listen to podcast episodes beginning to end. And I might skip through segments of it, like the beginning. Like for ours, when I boot it up, I just hit the fast forward 30 seconds because that's how long the intro is. So, right? Like I've already heard the intro a million times. So I just skip through it, which is probably what people do. Or like I skip through the Excalibur mid-roll because I'm a team member, so I don't need to hear it that many times. But otherwise, I listen end to end. And I listen to our episodes end to end too, like multiple times usually.
I by the time it's published, I've listened to it n-1 times, and then I also listen to the published feed to make sure there's nothing wrong with it.
Yes, yeah, me too. And I listen at about 1.2x. So I don't know. Do you speed it up?
I don't.
Okay, you don't. Okay, I listen to my podcast at like 1.2, sometimes 1.5x, depending on the hosts.
It depends on the. Well, I guess I'll take that back. Some podcasts, depending on the speaker, I might increase, just because my appetite for information bandwidth is higher.
Yep. But like I never, at least for regular like YouTube learning videos or tutorials, I don't usually speed them up because they're usually, if it's a good creator, it's already really dense, you know? Like trying to speed up a Fireship video that's already 100 seconds on TypeScript, like that's going to be probably less helpful. Anyway, so basically what it comes down to is I think that the listening habits between a podcast and videos are different. And I do think that one way to differentiate your podcast is to be human on it and inject that humanness into it, especially now, today.
Yeah. And, one thing I just thought of, I think we should do these retro podcasts on like maybe an annual basis, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I think that'll just allow us to summarize kind of what we've learned in the last year, what we've changed, or what we want to do different. And maybe it'll be like and this one's kind of like the more of a free flowing conversation than our others are typically are, on purpose. To get more genuine like conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't have that in my notes, but I did think about that. I do think it would be cool to do like a year in review episode annually. We could do it like during winter break or something.
Totally.
That sounds cool. Did I have anything else major? I was hoping that maybe... So one of the things that's a limitation of Transistor without upgrading is that we have to manually insert all these roles. So any of the like pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll, those are all manual right now. But what you can do is something called dynamic insertion, or like dynamic add insertion. Well, and I was thinking that maybe it would be cool to make a rotating list of Excalibur mid-rolls and like have some fun with it. That way they're not always the same, so that, you know, people are less likely to skip it like me if they've already heard it, right? Like, it's fine. You can skip it. It's fine. But I just thought it might be fun to like either record new ones every so often or change them out. The other thing that we can't do right now very easily is we can't go and insert a promo for like something upcoming. So like the Squiggle Conf stuff would be great to like be able to just inject into all the previous episodes. So no matter which one you're listening to, you always get the latest, like what's coming up. So that's something that we'll have to think about, because it is more expensive if we upgrade our Transistor account to do that. But could be nice to be able to do that.
Then any episode you listen to, you get like up-to-date, timely, like ad roll.
Yep. And then the other thing on my to-do list is I noticed on some of the episodes, like episode 7 specifically, the chapters show up properly in Spotify, like in the either on the scrub track and also in the show notes. They're linked, right? So you can click on them. But some of the episodes are not like that, and I don't know why. I think it's the way that the export happened with those. So we got to figure that out, because I think for accessibility and to make it more friendly for listeners, we want that to be consistent and easy, so that if your player supports it, you should be able to jump to the different chapters just by scrubbing through or whatever.
I think it is straight up Riverside.
You think so? Because
I think it might be.
Episode 7, I think, was one I produced, and I used a tool that can create chapter markers and MP3s, and for one of the episodes, and it might have been that one, that's the MP3 that I uploaded, but I don't know if the ones that come straight from Descript work like that. They certainly work in Transistor. When they get uploaded, it shows the chapters, so that works. But there's something about it, in Spotify specifically, where it worked for episode 7, where you could jump between the chapters.
I think you have to embed it in the MP3.
Okay.
Like, I think we probably need to look at that tool and like make sure that I'm doing that when I'm editing.
Yep. Okay, so that's on our to-do list. I think we want to clean that up, make sure that all works. The other thing I had on my to-do list was I had an idea to update the logo, because right now it's kind of a generic microphone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I told this to you, but I think it would be cool if the microphone was made up of syntax highlighted code, like symbols. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how that's going to work yet, but that was my idea. Anyway.
We can try it.
But I feel like something with the logo might be nice. We're going to have to update it anyway if we switch to a Tuesday, Thursday publishing schedule, because right now it says every Monday. So
that's right.
By the way, bonus for Tuesdays and Thursdays, they start with T, and it's a TypeScript podcast. So
every day that starts with T.
Yeah, exactly. Every day that starts with T is when an episode comes out. Okay, yeah, that's all I had on my list. Before we end it, I think we want to go out on a cool note, and I would love to read some of these testimonials. Do you want to read a couple of these first ones that you put in here?
Yeah, and this one's fresh, but Dimitri posted in February, before we had reached out, that he learned about TypeScript FM, and I was like, that was so cool to see. And he was like, they started talking about chiptune music. I'm sold.
Yep. And then there's some, John Riley posted one on Blue Sky. He actually tagged us. He said, really lovely to hear Joshua Goldberg's dulcet tones on TypeScript FM talking about the vanilla TypeScript experience. And someone replied who I don't know. His name is Stephen Adams. Thank you, Stephen. He said, it's a great podcast. Woohoo.
Woohoo.
Yeah. So that's cool. And then one of your coworkers gave us some feedback directly via text. I think they texted you. Do you want to read that one?
Yeah, I'll remove the names to protect the innocent. But a friend of mine sent me a text that says, hey, I listened to the episode and it was fantastic. Whoever's editing is keeping it tight, which is great. A lot of rookie podcasters just ramble and don't cut anything. Conversation is full of filler words and gaps. But you two just sounded like you were having a great conversation and you were both fully engaged. And that's awesome because I don't know what I'm doing when I'm editing. And that I was like, awesome. Whoever's doing the editing, I guess we accidentally do the right thing.
Yep. I had someone reach out over LinkedIn who I didn't know, and they sent me a message and they said, "Hi, Kamran. Just want to tell you that I'm loving the podcast. Hope you can find an audience and keep it going. I think it will get traction. You guys have a great vibe and it's very informative," that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for it's very informative because that speaks to like one of our goals is to keep people informed. So I'm glad that they said that. And so, yeah, that's awesome. And there's a few people that when I posted it into some of my Slack communities, some people said, "You guys seem like you've been doing it for years." So that was cool. It's good to hear. But I think we got a good vibe going. I mean, because we're good friends in real life, so it makes it easy.
Yeah, it does make it easy. And I don't know if this helps a lot, but we both do a lot of public speaking, so I don't know if that helps. We've had some practice doing that.
Yes, sir. And this is actually my second podcast. Did you know that?
I did know that.
Yeah, so if you search for Kamran and You podcast, you'll find it. My previous one. I don't think any of the episodes are hosted anymore, but that was my first foray into doing podcast. Did you have anything else from other people? I feel like those were the ones that I got.
Yeah, I think that those were the ones I want to highlight.
Cool.
And I've gotten a lot of high five level, which is good. I mean, it's awesome to get that kind of feedback and that kind of it just makes me feel good.
Yeah, but for sure. And I think we'll see more, as time goes on. Like this is only the one of the like week 14 or something like that, week 14 or 15. And other podcasts that we listen to are hundreds of weeks in. Like .NET Rocks is on. I don't even know what they're on. Episode 300, 600.
Are they in 4 digits yet?
I don't know. But I can't. That just is like. I can't even imagine that yet of like, if we look back on this 10 years from now, we've been doing it every single week. Like that is crazy. So, and that to me brings up sort of like the legacy aspect of this is like, maybe this is like kind of a legacy project. So I don't know. We'll see. But at least for now, as of this retrospective, we're going to continue. So that's how it's going to be. And we'll decide later if that changes.
That's right.
Cool. All right. I think that's a good close.
I think that's a great close.
All right.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for hanging out.
And of course, if you feel differently about anything that we've said, if you're like, no, please keep it all in one episode, makes it easier for me. Please don't split it up. Actually, that's something that we want to know. So for sure, send us feedback. You just tag us on Blue Sky if you need to, or send us an email. But hopefully, look forward to hearing from you.
All right. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to typescript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at kamranigus.com and Erik is at erikonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.